Next up, we're going to hear from Alan Hall, who is Operations Manager and System Owner at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So if you are with us, Mr. Alan Hall, we will go over to you next.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear, and I'm assuming that Katie is setting you up as our next presenter to share your screen.
And did the screen come up? So it's loading.
It did. It's there, and we see it.
All right.
All right, Mr. Hall, over to you, and we see you.
Perfect. All right. Let me see if I can move this out of the way. All right. Still see me, right?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, so why do we still use tape? I get this question many, many times, especially from some of the younger folks that are coming into the IT industry. They can't see a reason to continue to use tape. However, I think I can give you quite a few reasons as to why we still use tape and why we should still use tape. And also, is using the cloud an option for what we need to do? So let's talk about these just a little bit. Oh, wait. There. So I'm a 40-plus year IT veteran. I don't like admitting that. I wrote my first program in 1976. Of course, I was in high school. We'll go through, I won't go through all of those, but basically my career is now, I'm the operations manager for NOAA's enterprise level archive. So we archive all of the very large satellite data sets and a few other data sets also. So let's talk about some of that. My storage experience, of course, was the teletype. That was the first thing I used to write a program with, and you had to punch tape to punch out the program on because there wasn't enough memory to save any of your programs. And I do still have the tape from the first program I ever wrote. And we graduated through many different versions of tapes and discs throughout my career until we have finally gotten, of course, to our current tape technology, which there are several out there. We'll go over which ones we actually use. So NOAA's Enterprise Archive is called the Comprehensive Large Array Storage System. It's an archive of environmental data and products from many sources, mostly satellites, but there are many sources. Users can sign up for an account. They can order data. Orders are disseminated from our on-prem sites. Subscriptions are available so that as the data comes in, it is peeled off immediately and made available. It is not near real-time, and we're not a near real-time delivery. We are an archive. There are near real-time delivery systems within NOAA that take care of those kinds of requirements. And there are bulk orders for groups that need large amounts of data to do some sort of analytics or whatever new product they might be working on, and they need some of the older data to have a look at. So NOAA has a huge problem. It's $1 billion disasters. In 2018, there were $14 billion disasters, resulted in 247 deaths and $91 billion in damage. So NOAA needs to, we need to be able to do research applications faster. We need to deliver Earth observation systems faster so that we can predict faster, alert the public faster, and protect life and property. That is our main mission. So in order to achieve that, we have a constellation of satellites, quite a few. We have several that are in low Earth orbit that orbit all the time. And then we have some that are much, much further out that are focused on a fixed point of the U.S. We generally cover that with 2 satellites at any one time operationally to watch the west and the east of the United States. There are other satellites that are in station keeping. If one goes out or has a problem, we move the other one into place and we can continue moving right along. Same thing with the orbiters. Not pictured here, we do have one satellite that is very far out at the Lagrangian point, about 1 million miles out, so that we can watch the solar wind and eruptions from the sun and be able to predict and work with some of that. So, okay, what data do we have? How much data do we have? So up to about 2009, our legacy satellites were only about 600 gigabytes a day, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. However, with the next generation of satellites that came on board with a better resolution, higher capture rates, and things like that, our next generation satellites jumped to 6.6 terabytes per day. And legacy, we still have the legacy satellites and some other non-satellite data at about 1.7. So really, we're bringing in about 8.3 terabytes per day. So an increase of it's really closer to 14-fold from just a few years ago, and there's even more on the way as we begin to explore many other options for satellites out there. So here's some numbers that we store right now. We have 15 petabytes of data on a SpectraLogic Tfinity libraries. The ingest, of course, is 8.3 terabytes per day, dissemination of about 35 terabytes per day, or a ratio of 1 to 4. That is inching up, and the last couple of months we've actually been closer to a 1 to 5 ratio there, and our annual growth is 3 petabytes. Our hierarchical storage manager is HPSS. I have 2 libraries in 2 different geographic locations. I have one in Asheville, North Carolina, and one in Boulder, Colorado. That gives us that geographic separation and a second copy of the data in case something happens to one of the sites. So a total of 30 petabytes stored across there. And also it's good to point out that we almost never delete data. As a matter of fact, we don't even have a delete key. There's no way for us to really delete the data. There'd be no reason for us to delete the data. So let's talk about the SpectraLogics that we have, the Tfinities that we have. So the one in Asheville, North Carolina is an 84 petabyte capacity, 10 frame Tfinity library. We have 36 LTO tape drives, LTO 8 tape drives, and almost 7,000 LTO tapes. And each tape has about 12 terabytes native storage on it, which gives us the 84 petabytes in that particular library. The one in Boulder is just a little bit smaller. It's only 18 petabytes. It is an 8 frame instead of 10. And we have LTO 6 technology, which is a generation older than what we have in Asheville. Again, about 7,000 tapes. And the LTO 6 technology is only about 2.5 terabytes of native storage on that one. And I'll explain why that one's a little different. So a few years ago, we did a migration of tapes, which in the archive business, you're always having to migrate from one technology to another. And it was time for us to do that in Asheville. So we chose LTO 8 technology. We skipped a generation there, LTO 7, and moved on to LTO 8. And our operations shifted writing to LTO 8 in December of 2018. And then we started our migration in January of 2019 and completed in July of 2019. So we were able to move quite a bit of data, 165 days, almost 70 terabytes a day. And at that time, it was 11.1 petabytes. We had close to 400 million files, and we're moving somewhere around 2.3 million files a day. We have lots of small files. The satellites produce granules, and they tend to be very small. We group them together as much as we can, but it has to be able to be delivered back out to our customers in a way that they would use it. We did a verification of the checksums, and the whole operation was completed in August of 2019, and there were no tape errors on anything, either reading or writing in either direction. The earliest manufacture of the LTO 6 media was in May of 2013, so those tapes were quite a few years old there, but still we experienced no tape errors whatsoever with any of those. So moving on, the case for tape. So tape surpasses disks in their reliability. The data rates are 2 times faster than disks. Media life of 30 plus years. The technology is very robust. You can scale up to exabyte libraries, and with the addition of RAID, RAO, and TAUS, some of these allow you to stripe across multiple tapes, just like you do a RAID on a disk. And lowest energy consumption and total cost of ownership, intelligent robotics, smart cartridges. We'll talk a little bit about the intelligent robotics. And there are just no known recording limits for tape in the modern era. here. Thank you, Fred Moore, for that. So given that, most of our data is accessed somewhat infrequently, especially after the first year. Spinning disk is cost prohibitive and it's not nearly reliable as the tapes are. And since tape is the most reliable, it's the lowest total cost of ownership and fast retrieval, tape wins in every way possible for us as our storage medium, given that we have to preserve basically the world's climate data here. So the next question is cloud an option for us? Could we do this somehow in the cloud? So there's two options that we considered. One is a hybrid cloud, which allows us to store the second copy in the cloud. On-prem, we still have an on-prem copy in a tape library, and we still do all of our work on-prem. One side is completely decommissioned from that. So that would be our hybrid. So really, the copy that we put in the cloud would be considered a dark copy. We'll go over that just a little bit more. The second option for that is full operations in the cloud. So we would have a single preservation copy in Amazon Glacier Deep Archive. They guarantee us the durability of that down to 11 nines. So that's 99.99999 out 11 nines. The statistics I saw on that was something like one file in 10 million years. Now, I could be wrong on that statistic, but it's really, really astronomically durable out there in the cloud, according to Amazon's documentation. And all of our on-prem infrastructure in this particular option is decommissioned, so everything is run in the cloud. So let's dive into this just a little bit, see how we can go. So let's look at the hybrid solution that we talked about. So Glacier Deep Archive is where we would put one copy of our data, 15 petabytes, 700 million objects to upload with a growth of 3 petabytes annually. The Glacier copy is almost never accessed. The only time is a bad tape, which I showed you in our last migration. We rarely run across a bad tape. Almost never do we run across. Tapes do get damaged sometimes whenever they're being moved in and out of their rest state, but that is also something that's a very low risk also. So the only time we'd be accessed is some sort of data disaster recovery, catastrophic, something like that. And then that one site is decommissioned. On-prem still remains for the ingest, preservation, and dissemination. We're not using the copy in the cloud except just as a dark copy, to sort of make that clear. So let's look at those numbers. The numbers for that look somewhat promising as far as savings. So everything you see in green and the black numbers right there, those are my on-prem costs for that decommissioned site, and that is the Boulder site, the one that we plan on decommissioning there. So over the 5 years, those are my on-prem costs. But my recurring cloud storage costs for that dark copy that I rarely access is very agreeable to what we need to operate, and the savings is just under about $1 million a year. There is 1 year there where it's a little more than $1 million. That had to do with the tech refresh that we plan in that particular year for that one. COOT is a continuity of operations in the cloud. Since I don't have 2 full service sites anymore and I would decommission one, I need to be able to stand up in a disaster situation. If Asheville is down, I can stand up some of my operations in the cloud and keep running normally. At least for some period of time. So the savings are somewhat good. Well, let's look at full ops in the cloud. So we would do some sort of lift and shift. Now, I must say that we have worked very hard over the last few years to containerize all of our processes and services so that it fits very well into VMs and is very easy to lift and shift to the cloud if we needed to do that. And we use high availability hardware just like you would in the cloud, and we can shift things around to different hardware stacks quickly if something's going on or if we need to patch, some things like that. So All of those functions would be lift and shift, so ingest, metadata extraction, preservation, dissemination. External dissemination is also considered. We're geared for a 1 to 6 times ingest. The actual numbers hover somewhere around 1.4 times the ingest, but we need to be able to disseminate up to 1.1 to 6 times. We also assume that the hybrid cloud migration is complete, so we've already decommissioned one site, it's already down. Full service no VMs initiated in Amazon, and we have already tested full service node work in the cloud for a COOP event. So if we can do all of that, then we can decommission our on-prem primary site completely. However, let's look at the numbers for that. The numbers for that aren't quite as agreeable. So all of the black there, of course, are my costs for on-prem costs of my full-service node left in Asheville over the next 5 years. And our recurring cloud costs are everything running in the cloud, all of my compute cycles, all of my dissemination, storage costs, all of that added into those recurring cloud costs, and the numbers don't work out very well for that. And it's mostly egress. Egress costs out of the cloud is very expensive. My customer base would still egress the data, whether it comes from an on-prem system or whether it comes from a cloud. It's just a URL to them. They would not necessarily use the Amazon cloud services to do their work. They would still export it out. 30% of our users are foreign. And so there's no way those would all export out of the cloud, egress still from the cloud. So our egress costs are very, very high, and they make it to where this is not an attainable situation. So let's put the two together here. So using the hybrid solution, which is the Amazon dark copy, saves us about $4.3 million with that option. However, if we do full cloud in the ops, full cloud operations, then we're about 5.3 million in the red over these 5 years. So it doesn't work out. The numbers don't work out for us. So we have chosen to remain on-prem with all of our tape technology here. So Amazon Glacier Deep Archive is the second copy. It saves infrastructure costs for that second copy, which is a requirement for us for many reasons. Retrievals for disaster recovery are tolerable both in cost and the time, and of course that second copy has the durability of 11 nines out there. So that wins as a cost-saving alternative. However, class full in the ops does not win. The on-prem solution is still the best scenario for us moving forward in this. So no hate on tape. That's what we've got. I have my nice shirt here that I made up. So tape is still rules the day for us, and probably will, at least in the near-term future, that we can see for right now. So thank you.
All right, and we haven't gotten this question yet, but it's about to come in, I'm sure. Where can they get a T-shirt like that, Alan?
I had it made up specially for me, so it's not out there that you can get commercially. So I had this made up.
All right, a couple of questions, and we've got a couple of minutes to take them. One question that came in early was, how many satellites do you have access to? I think we were impressed with that space picture. What would you say roughly?
Well, we're geared to be able to ingest from 2 polar orbiting satellites and 2 geostationary satellites at one time. So all 4 of those at one time. However, NOAA has a constellation of each of those, multiples of those. So there's at least 4 to 5 total polar orbiters and at least 5 to 6 of the geostationary that are always waiting in the wings. But operationally, there's 2 of each at one time.
Okay, great. A comment and a question. The comment was amazing, all that transfer and no errors. So I want to ask if you were surprised by that, or what was your reaction?
I was not surprised by that, because knowing the tape technology, as long as I've worked with tape for 20 years or so, I am not surprised by that. Even back in the days of reel-to-reel, mean, it was very unusual for a tape to go bad. And with the technology and the barium ferrite, I was not surprised by that.
And so I'm going to jump around a little bit here. It says, when you think end of life for tape library technology, do you think of that in the near future? So what is your thought on end of life on tape?
No, I don't see end of life of tape anywhere in the near future. The problem is the data is growing exponentially in every sector, not just in our sector, in every sector. I mean, whenever you're looking at autonomous cars, for example, are producing somewhere around 2 terabytes of data a day. Now, they say they don't save that data. I argue. I think they are saving that data. But as the autonomous cars come online and we get up into the next generation of those autonomous cars where they can actually drive themselves, and we're at a very low level of autonomous cars, it's a data explosion. There's not enough manufacturing on the planet to put that on disk drives. There's just not, and to save it all and to keep it online. And even though the cloud service providers won't tell you, I am almost positive somewhere in the deep reaches of those data centers is tape.
Yeah, and I guess the manufacturers are feeling the same way, because we see LTO, LTO 9 is about to come out, and we've got a roadmap that goes all the way through LTO 12. So I think there's a lot of confidence from the storage manufacturers as well on that.
And it keeps shrinking your footprint. It keeps shrinking your footprint to the point that I can still use the same SpectraLogic Tfinity, but yet grow it exponentially. I mean, into multiple exabyte storage. Absolutely.
Gotcha. And the last question, and it's kind of vague, so you might need to add in a little bit. Where do you get the best performance, cloud or on-site?
That's a really good
what type
question.
of performance.
That's a really good question. I do believe that we can pull it off of tape faster and quicker to service an order for a customer that would want some sort of bulk order or something than we can from the cloud, because there are specific rules about Glacier Deep Archive, and it takes 12 hours to retrieve things like that. Now, as an archive, it generally doesn't matter how quickly we pull it out, but we can pull it from the tape faster.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you, Alan. We appreciate your time, your contribution. Always fun to hear you speak. Thumbs up.
Thank you.
Thank you.